And now, to present the 2002 Engineering Achievement Awards, the Senior Vice President of NAB Science and Technology, Mr. Lynn Claudy.
It's my privilege to introduce two individuals whose accomplishments in the engineering field have earned them great respect from the broadcast industry, and today, NAB's highest engineering honor, the Engineering Achievement Award. For outstanding achievement in radio engineering, our honoree today is Paul Schafer. Paul Schafer has been in this business a very long time. He started his company, Schafer Electronics, in 1953 and was one of the original pioneers in the area of unattended operation of radio transmitters and radio station automation. Here's some highlights of his long career. In 1955, the Schafer remote control system was used by NAB in field tests that were designed to show the viability of unattended remote control of transmitters. As a result of the considerable data from those tests that were filed by NAB in 1956, the FCC amended their rules to permit the remote control of all radio transmitters. Then in 1956, using his remote control system, he supervised the installation of the first radio automation system at KGEE in Bakersfield, California, which makes him the founding father of radio station automation. Looking back in our files, we found a transcript of a radio automation workshop that was held at the NAB Broadcast Engineering Conference in 1968. It was held in Washington. And he described there how radio automation was born. So I'll use his words, quote, "A broadcaster came to me and said, 'I want you to build me a device that will automatically play records and insert announcements from tape. I want to close the doors of the radio station at 8 o'clock at night and still provide a service to my community all night long. I can't afford to do that with people, but with remote control, I can. Would you be interested in making such a device?' And Paul said, 'Well, I'm not really sure it would be practical,' unquote. Obviously, Paul made it practical, and radio automation was off and running. Ultimately, over 1,000 Schafer automation systems were installed in AM and FM stations all over the world, and Paul Schafer became a preeminent expert in the field. He was awarded a patent for the random access spot locator. He authored a chapter in the 1960 5th edition of the NAB Engineering Handbook on remote control of broadcast stations. Schafer Electronics buses traveled the country, introducing automation to radio stations everywhere. He founded Schafer International in 1969 and subsequently Schafer Digital Project in 1986. And for the linchpin of evidence of his overachieving habits, to say that he's a regular attendee at NAB conventions would be a vast understatement. He has been in attendance at every NAB convention since 1953, this year being his 50th consecutive year of doing so. And we'd like to thank Paul's son, Rob Schafer, for bringing that and other details of his father's life to our attention. Paul, on behalf of the National Association of Broadcasters and your colleagues in the radio industry, I'm pleased to present the NAB Radio Engineering Achievement Award to you in commemoration of your outstanding career. We have a plaque for you, and it reads as follows: presented to Paul C. Schafer in recognition of his distinguished professional career for outstanding contributions to the development of radio broadcasting technology, for pioneering work in development of transmitter remote control and radio station automation systems, and for over 60 years of dedicated commitment to innovation in broadcast engineering. Congratulations, Paul.
Wow. Well, to say that I'm honored to receive the NAB Engineering Achievement Award would be a masterpiece of understatement. And really, it's just for doing what's been interesting and fun for 60 years. 60 years ago, I started in radio, running the board and playing records, 78 RPM records, at my hometown radio station, 100-watt WJOB in Hammond, Indiana. That was 1942. I was 17. Following year, I went on to WOWO Fort Wayne, I learned how to change those big water-cooled tubes in a 10-kilowatt transmitter that took up 2 complete floors of a very large building, and running the board on some big live shows. I went into the Army, the Signal Corps. After World War II, I returned to Fort Wayne. In 1948, Glenn Thayer started a new radio station, WANE. He was an early mentor of mine. He taught me a lot, and he let me innovate. Oh, we had great fun covering news live, like very unusual then, especially for a little radio station. And we broadcast live baseball games of the Fort Wayne Daisies, a girls' baseball team that was, if you remember the movie with Madonna, A League of Their Own, well, that was the league. It was a lot of fun. In 1949, I went on to WNOR Norfolk, Virginia, where we had fun covering the floating of the battleship Missouri that had run aground. There were no Martys in those days. I got my hands on a surplus Army tank transmitter, and we covered the event live from the bridge of the battleship Missouri. On January the 2nd, 1951, I arrived in LA without the pot or the window, and was lucky enough to get a job at NBC. I had the great pleasure of working at NBC Hollywood, Sunset and Vine, in those golden years of radio. I had the fun of working shows like The Bob Hope Show, whodunits like Dragnet, Nightbeat. Speaking of which, the show Nightbeat, one of my sons, Rob, was born, conveniently, between the dress rehearsal and the live show of Nightbeat on December the 17th, 1952, really. After the dress rehearsal, I went to the hospital, Rob was born, and I returned in time to mix the live show on the network. I guess it's no wonder that Rob followed me into the broadcast industry. He now does a great job working for CBS NewsPath in New York City. Rob is here, his wife, Beth, my daughter, all 4 of my sons, their mother, 4 of my grandkids, and so many wonderful friends, making today much more of a special occasion. It was Beth Hudson Schafer, Rob's lovely wife, who also works for CBS New York, who first suggested to Rob that maybe I should get some kind of an award just for attending 50 NAB conventions. Well, that led Rob to nominating me, and here I am. I thank you, Beth. I thank you, Rob. And I thank the Academy. 50 years ago, while I was working at NBC Hollywood, the FCC started allowing radio stations to operate transmitters unattended by remote control, and I designed the first Schafer remote control system, and that was the beginning of Schafer Electronics. I started building remote control systems in my garage with the help of a young high school student who was interested in radio. He was good. His name, Marvin Collins. He's been in broadcasting ever since with KFI Los Angeles for many, many years. And, oh yes, in 1953, I attended my first NAB convention. Since then, I haven't missed a show. I was an exhibitor at a lot of them. And this week, as you know, I'm attending my 50th consecutive NAB convention. And in the early 1950s, we were building remote control systems. Prose Walker, a legend in the industry, then head of the engineering department for the NAB, asked if we install remote control systems in some 50 kilowatt and directional stations. We made the installations, and the NAB convinced the FCC to authorize remote control of all transmitters. In fact, that chapter in the NAB Engineering Handbook covering remote control that carries my name would not have been nearly as good without the assistance and editing of Prose Walker. He was a great mentor, and still today is a wonderful friend. I talked to Prose a few weeks ago. He was celebrating his 92nd birthday. He said if I could find anyone old enough to remember him, I should pass along his regards. But how did I get from there to being called the father of automation? Well, in 1956, Dexter Heyman owned radio station KGEE in Bakersfield, California. He invited me up for dinner one evening. He had an idea. He'd install a remote control system and control his transmitter from a telephone answering service. And if I could design and build an automation system that would program his station unattended all night long, well, anyway, over dinner, we envisioned the system that would program the sequence of the 45 RPM records played in a Seabird and commercials and station breaks from reel-to-reel tape recorders. He asked me, how much would it cost? I guessed about $7,000. And this is the truth. He pulled out a checkbook and he wrote me a check for $7,000 and handed it to me. I said, but Dexter, what if I don't want to build it? He said, then don't cash the check. He asked me if I thought automation like this didn't sound like a great idea. I told him I wasn't sure. I'd go home and think about it. Well, the longer I carried that $7,000 check in my pocket, the better the idea sounded. And the first Schafer automation system was born. I built a second system and put it in a trailer and started hauling it around, demonstrating it to station owners and engineers. It was the only way to convince skeptics that automation worked. Ultimately, we had 3 motorhomes traveling the U.S. demonstrating automation systems. In fact, the first station where I demonstrated this system was at KDB Santa Barbara. And one of the owners, Jim Harford, was an accomplished engineer. Jim bought system number 2, installed it, and then joined me as chief engineer at Schafer Electronics. And Bob Levinson, his chief engineer from KDB, joined us and managed manufacturing for many years. Automation system designs improved, the spotter was born and patented and put into production. Oh, the spotter was an Ampex, a reel-to-reel Ampex, that went off at high speed and located any one of 100 spots on the tape. Remember, this was before cart machines. Well, in 1965, Prose Walker wanted to demonstrate the US standard for FM stereo engineers all over the world, and wanted to feed stereo to a satellite and get it back from outer space. Prose, another good friend Harold Cassens, and friends from Collins Radio and I took a couple of Ampexes out to the Mojave Desert in California, where JPL had their satellite tracking station. We fed stereo tones and then music to an orbiting satellite, got it back, and recorded it. And this recording was played successfully for the international meeting in Europe. Schafer Electronics continued to build and install automation systems. Ultimately, we would sell more than 1,000 of them all over the world. One day, Gordon McClendon suggested that we put music on tape instead of 45s. Sure enough, it was a good idea. By then, we had gone well beyond the original Model 60, the blue wire job, and we were installing the Model 800s. So reliable, there's still some in operation. And remember, these old automation systems used relays and stepping switches. When I retired from Schafer Electronics in 1968, I started at a company that I still enjoy today, Schafer International. I do business with radio and TV stations, mostly in Mexico. And, little sideline, I buy giant video screens from stadiums in the United States and sell them to baseball stadiums in Mexico. Incidentally, if you know anyone who'd like to buy one, I have one from the New England Patriots stadium that I still have available. But now I run my company, Schafer International, from my home office in Bonita, California, San Diego area. My winter office is my motorhome parked on my beach in Mazatlan, Mexico, where I step out of the door into the sand that close to the high tide mark. Some of what I'm doing can be found on our website, schaferinternational.com, thanks to my webmaster, my son, Chris Schafer. Well, to say that these 60 years have flown by would be a masterpiece of understatement. Time flies when you're having fun. Thank you.